Hello and welcome to the Unblocked Podcast Network. This is Coach Fred Riley along with Brian Godfrey. Keith is on his way back from SoFi Stadium, going out and watching his beloved Bears get beat on worldwide television last night with his girlfriend. But I know they had a great trip. We miss you, Keith. We'll see you on Wednesday night, hopefully. Our broadcast is sponsored by OsteoStrong out of Mobile. Bone health is more important than muscle health as you get older. Please also follow us, like, subscribe, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, everywhere you find social media. We are on it and we are there. We'd love to hear from you. Call, check in with us, message us. We will answer anything and everything, right or wrong. We will make an effort at it. Brian, good to see you, man. Glad you're feeling better.
Good to be back. Voice is still a little shaky, but it's exciting to be back amongst the living after taking a week kind of being vertical, I guess they call it, being down in the bed. So
Good deal. Good deal. So where are we starting at tonight, Brian? We're going straight into conference play?
Into conference play. You want me to go first or you want to go?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead and take off.
ACC, obviously Florida State beat Wake. Florida State and Louisville kind of control their destiny right now. That's who it looks like will play. Georgia Tech with a big upset of North Carolina. It's still not out of it. The one thing that did surprise me, Coach, was Louisville shut Duke out. Now, Riley Leonard was not mobile, obviously, so that limited him. NC State downed Clemson, and the coach called out Steve Smith. Have you ever seen so many coaches call out broadcasters and going towards bulletin board material in post?
Yeah. I mean, and you know, I guess that's just where we are now in the world. That you just, you know, I grew up. You just ignore the knuckleheads and go and take care of you. You may in your locker room, you may say something about it. Basketball school, you know, but you can't get through a post game interview with that to some guy who's just. I mean, Steve Smith
was a celebrity picker.
Steve Smith's just saying what he's on game day. I mean,
he was a celebrity picker.
That's right. I mean, you know, they're going to say odd stuff and off the mark stuff on that kind of stuff on live TV. I mean, it just happens. So
coaches used to say they don't listen to the media, though. Coach, they never hear anything.
They do, and that was always a lie. They do.
Yeah.
They just usually don't comment on it. They'll listen to it. They'll read it. That controls who gets called on in press conferences. Sure. You give me a hard time, I'm not going to point at you. Yeah. You just ain't going to get a shot. So now they just yap back at them some. So, oh well.
That's been interesting this year. A couple times that's happened. Over in the Pac-12, Washington beat Stanford. Oregon hammered Utah. A beat-up Utah team. But Coach and I were talking beforehand. We think Oregon is the best team in the Pac-12 still, despite their loss to Washington. And we'll kind of see when the conference rankings come out. We'll kind of go over our top six later on in the show. Arizona got a big win over Oregon State. That's Jed Fish, I think, fifth win. So he's almost bowl eligible. UCLA beat up Colorado. I felt sorry for Shedeur Sanders, Coach. I mean, he had no time. And I haven't seen a game so – I mean, in the first half, I think he was hit 14 times as a quarterback, and they just kept dropping him back because they don't have the run game or the offensive linemen to protect him. And I mean, he just got beat up. And I don't care what you say about his attitude, whatnot. He kept hanging in there and kept throwing the ball and slinging it around. But UCLA was way too tough. Defensive line just outnumbered Colorado's offensive line. USC survives Cal. I don't know how many more USC losses we're going to see, but a 1-point victory over Cal. That kind of they needed late in the game to come up with that. Arizona State beat Washington State. Cover the Big 12 for Keith. Obviously, the biggest upset was Kansas Downs, Oklahoma. That was Kansas's biggest first top 10 upset in Lawrence over a top 10 team, Coach, since 1984. Mike Gottfried was the coach. Mike Norseth was the quarterback, and Brian Bosworth still says that's his worst loss. Spencer Tillman also fumbled in that game too. So, and Kansas beat them, and that honestly propelled Mike to the Pitt job after he beat USC the year before. Texas beat BYU. Kansas State skunked Houston. 0 points for Houston. Then they get back and find out from the NFL they're in trouble for their uniforms. They look too much like the Houston Oilers. So bad news in Houston comes twofold. West Virginia got to their 5th win. Neil Brown's doing a good job of turning that one around, former Troy coach. Iowa State beats Baylor. Oklahoma State, that's one team to watch out for. They beat Cincy 45-13, and Oklahoma State, I believe, plays Oklahoma this week. So Oklahoma could be in trouble there in the Bedlam game. So we'll see. But, 4-1 is Oklahoma's record, Iowa State's record, Oklahoma State's record, Texas, and Kansas State. So the Big 12, there's a lot still to play for. Obviously, Coach, if you want to go with the Big 10 or the SEC or
Sure,
wherever you're going.
Big 10 real quick. The Ohio State-Wisconsin game was a fun old school game to watch. A lot of football played between the tackles, and so enjoyed watching that game. Minnesota beat Michigan State, Penn State over Indiana. Indiana's played some pretty good football here and there to beat 2-5 or 2-6, whatever they are. Nebraska over Purdue. Northwestern beating Maryland. All the talk about Maryland back just a few weeks ago, and Northwestern pretty much given up for dead. And,
Coach has done an unbelievable job there rallying that team.
It really has. They have to hang in there and find a way to win a football game. That's good stuff by them. SEC, Ole Miss over Vandy. We'll make a plug for Cedric Johnson, the SEC Defensive Player of the Week. I coached him at Davidson, and his brother Cephas. Cephas was a quarterback for us. He's with Tampa Bay now on the practice squad. But proud to say it, comes from a magnificent, athletic family, wonderful people out of Mobile, and very, very, very proud for him. Georgia wins the world's largest outdoor cocktail party.
Do you think they look different, Coach? Yesterday versus when you've seen them before?
I just think that there are very few teams in the country that are well enough coached. And I'm not being critical of anybody. I'm just saying very few teams get better. And you can see the improvement in them. That was something that wasn't quite right. And all of a sudden it disappears and gets fixed. Kirby's staff does that. Saban's staff does that. They whatever their weakness, they take weaknesses early in the season and turn them into strengths. I mean, they're just so good at doing those type things. And I think that's what you just don't see teams like that have a lot of hiccups either. Even Keith's gotten on Michigan about Michigan and their sorry schedule, but they haven't gone out and laid an egg. They haven't gone out and taken a quarter off and wallered around. So it takes a really good coaching staff to get your team ready to play every week, environment wise, on the road, at home, and coaching is making things, bad things disappear. Those things that are on film, making them disappear, and they just do a great job of that. Tennessee, Kentucky was a really good football game. With Tennessee winning that. Auburn finally got them a win over Mississippi State. My Auburn folks got mad at me at the beginning of the year when I said, they're going to be 3-3 or 3-4, and they may lose 4 in a row, but then they're going to have some 50-50 games. They're going to have Mississippi State and Arkansas, 2 50-50 games. They're going to have Vandy, who they should beat. They're going to have New Mexico State they should beat. All of a sudden, you're sitting at 7-4 going to the Iron Bowl and looking at what bowl game you're going to be in if you can manage to win those 50-50s. So they managed to get one of them. Arkansas being the other one down the road. And Mississippi State didn't have their quarterback. They just couldn't manufacture any offense. LSU, who Coach Saban today called the best offensive football team in the country, and his press conference manhandled Army, and then cover South lost to Louisiana, last week, and that would have been the one game I would have lost in my picks. I had South after playing so well the week before at home. I thought they would beat Louisiana. Now they got to bounce back and play Troy. I think at Troy this week.
Yep.
Troy's probably the best team in the league right now. So they've got their hands full, across the bay over there. So that's all SEC Big Ten for this past week. Still a lot of good football
One thing
left ahead of us.
I think with Georgia is they've got a healthy Lad McConkey now.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives that quarterback that option of that one guy to go to on the third downs now with the tight end obviously being injured. So what do you think about the LSU-Alabama game going up? I know we're going to talk about it later in the week, but obviously that's a huge one in the SEC West.
Sure. I mean, it will be interesting. Susan and her family going up. I'm going to stay home watching on TV. LSU's a handful now. I mean, they're the ones that they had a couple of oopsies early, but once they've gotten it going, that quarterback, the speed of the game that LSU brings in every skill position is so fast. They're so fast twitch everywhere, and their ability to just run off with it. It's just amazing. I think it's going to be a heck of a football game. I know Alabama's favored because they're at home. You probably pick them because they're at home, but I don't think anybody will be stunned if LSU wins. I mean, they're a really, really good team.
I think that's going to be a big game with Ole Miss having to go to Georgia still left in the season. So it's a big game in determining who's going to end up playing Georgia in the SEC championship. So.
Sure, and you wonder when you start getting into the playoff scenario. Normally the SEC championship game is basically a playoff game.
Yep.
Is it a playoff game if Georgia's undefeated and they're playing a 2-loss LSU or 2-loss Alabama? However that plays out, are you going to jump a 2-loss SEC champion into the Final Four? I mean, that's going to be tough. Now, are you going to take body of work? Or who's going to win on that day? I mean, Georgia would probably, if they were to lose that game, probably just drop to fourth. And stay in it if they ran the table and were undefeated. But that's going to be interesting. You're right. This weekend, I mean, it could change the whole outlook of the SEC, especially the West, for the rest of the year.
And I think when Georgia matches up with Missouri, that's going to be the big one in the East. Probably the one that Georgia, probably won't be favored by 16 points.
Right.
Maybe favored by 12 or 13, but we'll see. Tonight, Monday Night Football, you got Raiders, Lions. Lions coming back off of that beatdown in Baltimore. One thing I wanted to talk about was all the quarterbacks injured, Coach. With Kirk Cousins tearing his Achilles, we obviously pray for a strong recovery for him.
Right.
Good Christian guy. How do you get that second quarterback ready, Coach? Because obviously they're not getting the same amount of reps. Is there a percentage that you try to put, early in the season, and then you try and build on that? But how do you get that second guy ready when there's just so much time that you can practice?
And in high school, we practice longer than the NFL teams do. So we were going to be out there at probably 45 minutes to an hour longer than the NFL practices. So our backup, we always covered the what ifs in every position. I mean, we weren't going to get in a game and oh heck, we have not examined that. We stirred constantly. We stirred on the board. We stirred on the field. And at quarterback, the backup always got a third of the reps. Always. 2 to 1, 2 to 1, 2 to 1. He didn't get, but and that way, and I made sure that he got to run everything that was going to be run in the game. He got to run it and execute. He would get 1 2-minute drive a week just in case. What if the starter goes down in the middle of a 2-minute drive? We're just going to roll him out there, and he hadn't operated that that circumstance or situation. So our backup always got a third of the reps. I know NFL, those guys don't hardly get any. And, and again, it's a time thing. I understand that. But you think maybe they're going to have to some of them have to revisit how you put practice together, in order to make sure, because that so many of them have gone down and continue to go down, no matter how much you protect them. I mean, they're protected every way. I think the only way left to protect them is eliminate eliminate holding penalties on offensive line if it's above the waist. I mean, if you've got them, it's not holding. I mean, and just because they've done everything they can to affect the DBs and on that backside, and that's about the only thing you've got left is say, you know what,
Put flags on them.
If you get your big paws on them up top and you can hang on to them, and we ain't calling holding on you anymore. And sort of like high school playoffs, they don't throw a holding penalty for the high school playoffs rolled through in Alabama. There's a month, ain't a holding penalty called hardly. The flags disappear. Might have to be a little. If it wasn't for all this TV on every play replayed in the stadium, they could get away a little bit of that, saying, we're just not calling as much. But hard to do that with all them eyes on you all the time.
Yeah, and the reason I asked is the Giants came in with that backup quarterback, and they ended up throwing for -9 yards in that game. That probably set the Giants set the offense back maybe 50 yards. I saw him run a couple veers when I flipped over and was watching, and I was just thinking, it kind of felt bad for the guy, the backup, because it was like they weren't giving him a chance to compete. And like you said, maybe the shorter practices, maybe they can figure something out in the meantime to make it a more watchable game, because obviously the quarterback's biggest investment. I'll tell you, one quarterback that did really well last week was Will Levis. So he had a big game for the Titans, 4 touchdowns. Came in off, and the question is, are they in rebuild or not? Obviously, the trade deadline's tomorrow. There's been a couple moves, a couple defensive linemen, but obviously going into 6 o'clock, I didn't see a whole lot of moves that made me just go, wow. The Broncos beating the Chiefs, Coach. It goes back to your saying 9-8. They want everybody to be 9-8.
If you win 11, you're really good.
It was a flu game for Pat Mahomes. I was hoping for snow like the Colorado State Air Force game. So, because Denver had gotten a lot of snow on the previous day. 49ers, 3 losses in a row. That's something to watch. Brock Purdy obviously goes from America's sweetheart to America's most overrated quarterback in the span of about 2.5 weeks.
It doesn't take long. Keith, I'm sure would get a kick out of the fact that the Broncos PA system played Taylor Swift music at the Kansas City players as they were leaving the field post game. Shake it off, I believe, was what they were playing.
That's what everybody's got to do in football. You and your team loses, you shake it off. Matty would be happy about that. So, Coach, tomorrow is the big day where they announce in Grand Prairie, Texas, I think it is. They go and announce the ratings for college football. Do you want me to give you mine first,
Sure.
My top 6? And I have no idea how they're going to do this, but I've got Georgia 1, Michigan 2, Florida State 3, OSU 4, Washington 5, Texas 6, and Alabama is the first team out. Now you could make an argument, Coach, for Georgia and Michigan hadn't played anybody, so we're going to move FSU and OSU to the top. But, obviously just to make a ranking, it's as much anybody's guess at this point. And we'll all know tomorrow. No rankings will matter after tomorrow, except for every Tuesday when they release
it. My top 6 are exactly the same as yours, believe it or not. We're top 6 are the same. I've got Oregon and Alabama as the first 2 out, whichever way they go with it there. With 7, and they have exactly the same. I'm also pleased that we don't have to have any more Oregon State discussions. Since Arizona
squirrel burgers.
Arizona took care of them and ended that talk.
I like their quarterback. I like their coach.
Arizona.
But what's interesting to me though is some teams are going to get screwed again this year. Obviously, we were talking beforehand about the 2-loss team. Can you put them in there? And it's Coach. It's just going to depend who. And with the 4-team playoff, it's obviously flawed. But if you look back to what all the way back to Roy Kramer and then Mike Slive's days, and we're all the time building and building and building to get to this playoff, and I can't wait till next year when we're at either 12 or 16. I don't know that they'll jump the shark and go straight to 16. I thought that a while back, but obviously it's going to be a whole different animal next year versus this year.
It's still difficult. I mean, I can go back to my senior year at North Alabama, 81. We're playing Jacksonville State for the conference championship. They're ranked third. We're ranked fourth. We both are assuming that we're in. We knew that whoever wins the championship is going to be in, but assuming that the loser's going to be in too. And they beat us 21-14. We finished the game throwing it in the end zone from about 25, and they knock it down and they win. And so we go to the team meeting on Sunday to find out where we're going to play, to find out that the East Coast voters have put Shippensburg State in at number 8 and dropped us to number 9. Shippensburg gets beat 56-0 in the first round by some team from the Deep South. But what do? I mean, you go back, you have no idea when that game was over that your career is over. Your senior year is over and it's done. You're assuming, all right, we lost by 25 yards to the number 3 team in the nation. And, so there's always going to be somebody that's going to be the 13th, the 5th team, the 13th team, the 17th team. I mean, there's just no getting away from it.
They'll have a gripe. I just think more is better. That's the thing that, and with these conference realignments, everybody gets mad at me whenever I say I want super conferences. I want super conferences so we have better games. I don't want to watch Alabama and Auburn play the 1AA teams a week before they play each other. To me, it's, you get bigger conferences, maybe we get better games, and that's what I like. I like good games, no matter who they are.
I think everybody does. It eliminates all the talk about, you don't play nobody. I mean, and you get into even FCS playoffs. I mean, you got 3 lost teams in FCS playoffs that make a run. I mean, they get in it and get hot. They get matchups of people that they can't handle the system that they run, or just individual matchups. And next thing you know, you're in the national championship game at 12-3 or whatever. So once you get into that and playing every week, it becomes more NFL-like. Guys get hurt. You're not playing some patsy, so you can rest all your guys and still beat them 50-0. I mean, each which is again the advantage that say Michigan has right now over everybody else is their guys have. There's a certain number of snaps in your body per year before you start getting beat up and banged up. Well, their guys aren't close to using up their snaps, because they haven't played the fourth quarter, all year long. So they're going to be a little faster, a little stronger, a little healthier. Down the stretch where other teams have been getting beat on and banged on a little bit more than they have, and you play who's on your schedule, and that's the way it goes. I mean, they can't do nothing about it. But the super conference thing, I think next year their schedule is a little more interesting with some of those teams that I say you got to beat somebody when you east of the Mississippi, where they get to play some. They come and play Michigan next year, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, and I'll tell you that ACC just came out with their schedule for the next 7 years, and I thought they're going to be redoing that thing next year, probably, or the year after, when the mass exodus starts from the ACC.
Oh, and one other thing you mentioned on the trade thing that I thought about when you were talking. There was a post a while ago about Jameis Winston.
I saw that.
Possibly,
Minnesota.
They would go to Minnesota because of their situation. That would be interesting to see how that played out.
I'd like to see Jameis get something like that, but I don't know if they're ready to go ahead and call it a season or what they're going to do. They're probably still within striking distance of playoffs.
They're still right in the middle of it because the divisions, they're right there. So,
well, Detroit's kind of running away with that division, but we'll see. And they talked about trading Kirk Cousins, him waiving the no trade clause 2 weeks ago. So we'll see what happens. I think most of the trades will happen tonight, probably by 8 or 9 o'clock if they're going to happen, and then maybe something will break tomorrow. So before noon or whatever time the deadline, I think it's 2:00 Eastern Standard Time. So
Very good. Very good. Well, I want to throw out there Coach Unblocked. No Coach Unblocked this week. It's Halloween tomorrow night. I'm going to have 3 little hobgoblins running around. My grandkids are all coming over and family, and so we'll be out in the neighborhood running around trick or treating. We will have Wednesday night as we come back. Gary Beasley has agreed to come on the show. Gary Beasley is a longtime football official in Mobile and the Metro Mobile Officials Association. Gary is one of the best white hats in the business. High school, Gulf South Conference. He sees the best football players in the country because he does Mississippi junior college football. and there's some dogs over there. So, but we're going to talk to him about officiating and let him sort of tell his story about how he got into it, why he got into it, but also the scrutiny that they get, and how difficult it is to do what they do, and do it with really they're right most of the time. We get on them about the few times they're wrong, but their percentages of right and wrong are way, way, way up there. Hall of Fame numbers in any sport. So looking forward to having Gary on Wednesday. He's going to be a really fun guest, sharp guy.
He can answer how fast it is and how quick you've got to make that decision on
No
what
doubt.
to call.
No doubt.
That's the hard thing, I think. It's easy for us to look at replays, and I'm as bad as anybody. I rip the refs on this and that. But, the things that I don't like is when they watch the replay. You watch the replay. The guy in the booth says the replay is this, and then they come back and say it's that. I just think
it still shows how just 100% still subjective it is. Yeah. When an expert in the booth says that was a catch, and they come back and say, no,
it wasn't a catch. So
so it's still in the eyes of the beholder when it's that close. It's tough.
Well, I respect anybody that goes out there and does it and gets ripped by people like Dan Brennan and Jim Cox. I'm just kidding on that one, but
I tell you what, one thing, Dan and Jim, they have a knack for having the worst absolute games the last 3 years on the game of the week, and them having to fill time in the second half. And they do a wonderful job of doing that and not being critical of the team that's getting beat 50-7, not being critical of officials. They find some way to stay upbeat and positive since 1998. And we tune them in
some of those games.
If we're at home on Friday, we watch them and text into them and let them know that we're watching. And those guys have been a fixture around here for 25 years. So,
and do a great job covering high school sports.
No doubt. No doubt. Well, I'm done, partner. How about you?
Well, I appreciate everybody joining us, and I thank you, Coach, for coming on in my debut back with my voice held up. So looking forward to Wednesday and seeing everybody again and getting Keith back. So we'll be back to a full team on Wednesday.
Very good. Very good. Look forward to it, man.
Okay.
Bye.